So after week 2 of Guinness Six Nations, both Ireland and Scotland have back-to-back wins, and England got their first win under the Brothwick era. First, let's talk about England. 31-14 against Italy. That was an amazing game. What do you think about the performance? Dominant or scrappy?
I think a bit of both, actually. I think the first half, very dominant in terms of their forward pack, their power, their driving maul, worked really well for them. And then in the second half, Italy came alive a little bit, started to play a bit more of what we saw last week in the first round, and showed that they can stay in the game, and they've got that attacking ability. They can attack from anywhere and score some very good tries.
Yeah, I think England went route one and really showed their dominance. The pack was really, really strong, and also the 10-12 axis was far better this week, which we talked about last week. So certainly dominant first half, but it was good to see Italy come back into it in that second half, because we know that they were better than they were in the first half. But England looked pretty strong.
Absolutely, indeed. Like you asked, first half was dominant, and second half 40 missed tackles. Obviously, that shows so much scrappy in that England play.
Well, yeah, there was certainly an interesting match, quite a highlight of the weekend. And now we're going to introduce Matthew Bressens, former Italy Sevens international and co-founder of EAM, joining us from Perth. Matt, welcome to the show. After an incredible performance by Azzurri in week 1, what went wrong with Twickenham?
Well, I don't think much went wrong, if I'm honest. I think, to be honest, the pressure was on England. Everybody would have expected a win from England before the game. I don't think any betting man would have put their money on Italy to win. But, especially after the first round, losing against Scotland for England. I hate to remind you guys of that, but I'm sure the English were fired up for the game. But I think it was a credible performance from Italy, and they can take a lot from that, a lot of positives into their next game against Ireland.
Yeah, Kieran Crowley, the coach, the face didn't look really nice in that, especially after the half time where Italy couldn't trouble the scoreboard. Just talk us through the Italian depth in terms of going into next team, Matt, because they're facing the world number 1.
Yeah, it's going to be it's an uphill battle, and that doesn't get any easier, that's for certain. But Italian rugby is going places, and if you look back only 2 or 3 years ago, they were getting pumped 30, 40 points each game. So there's a lot of young players, and I think a lot of them are getting exposure in the UK, playing in the Premiership in the top 14 with Capuzzo, who has to be mentioned, World Player of the Year last year. So even with the under-20s as well, they're vastly improving in terms of their results. So that's going to have a trickle effect, obviously, into the senior setup. And Kieran Crowley has to take a lot of credit for the work he's done in a short space of time, along with Craig Goosen and Moreno, the coach for the forwards. Moro.
Mark, in terms of Rugby Italia, obviously, now we do know that most players are practicing in the England or in the United Kingdom. Would you be able to give us a bit more of an insight with regards to the system in place for talent identification pathway and club rugby? Sure.
Recently, I think about 3 years ago, Italy last year had a change of presidency where a gentleman called Gavazzi was the president for, I think, about 8 years. A new guy's come in, Mr. Innocente, and he's basically changed the model completely, where when Gavazzi was in charge as president, he put a lot of pressure on the players to play nationally. So all the talent had to stay, apart from Parise and Castro Giovanni. It was kind of unheard of for Italians to play abroad. That's all changed now. And as you correctly mentioned, that a lot of younger players are playing for the likes of London Irish, amongst others in the Premiership, and you've also got players playing in the top 14, which can only be a benefit because there's no discussing, or there's no argument to be had in terms of the professionalism in the UK in comparison to the Italian game. But having said that, you only have to look at the URC and Benetton Treviso, who 2 years ago won the URC Cup against the Blue Bulls, and at the moment I think they're in the top half of the table in terms of the URC. So there is a great amount of depth in Italian rugby at the moment. They're definitely living a high moment.
That's some great insights, Matt. Reflecting on Matt's comment, Italy again, second half was incredible, but talking about the depth in the squad and also under 19 playing well, you mentioned last time they just lost to France by a point, and they did give a tough fight to England.
Yeah, they were very good against England in the 20s match. And again, I think you just saw that same fight. The skill set is really improved in Italian rugby. And obviously, like Matt mentioned, the fact that these players can now go to the other leagues around the world, it's only be good for the development of the country in the long run, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that pathway is so important as well, isn't it? It's not just about the first team. You need that under 20s coming through, and that's what Italy have been working on, and it's starting to really happen for them.
How big is that Gabisi's absence in the Six Nations? We witnessed that Harlequins Thomas Allen is doing quite okay, but how much miss is Gabisi?
Garbisi's a massive miss, but I mean, you can't take anything away from Tommy Allen. He's certainly stepped up to the plate and come into his own. But Garbisi is, he's a top international player, that's for sure. So, I mean, he'd be a sore miss for most teams.
Just one more question. 2 driving maul tries and a penalty try, and Owen Farrell kicking away too many positions, and so did replacement Ben Errol. Do you guys think that's how England should be playing moving forward?
I think on the back of the Scotland win, they needed to be quite pragmatic. They needed to use their forward power. Obviously, Steve Borthwick being the coach, he's going to have a big influence on their forward power and their forward play. And I think Italy were a bit of an unknown. Obviously, they played so well the week before against France. And England would have, they had to go in thinking that that's probably the same performance they were going to, Italy can attack from anywhere. So you have to wear them down, grind them down the first half, which is exactly what they did. They used their forward power. Their driving maul is, it's always been a massive weapon for England. And that just gave them a level foot in the ground in the game and got them going. But then obviously that changed because I think England tried to change their style of play and Italy then came alive and got back into the game. So England at the moment, they've got to be calm. They've got to be a bit steady with how they go into these games because they are a new squad and they're learning and they're developing all the time. And I think they'll just have to be happy with the win.
I think for England, the win was more important than anything, wasn't it, on Saturday? We talked in the past about how important momentum is in the Six Nations, and when you lose your first game, it's really important that you get that second game win. And obviously England managed to do that. A bigger uphill task now for Wales, having lost their second game, and England will have got confidence from that win on Saturday. So yeah, they played very directly, but it worked. It was very, very effective what they did. So it was, it's not a surprise.
Yeah, win is a win, no matter how you play the game. But even at the post-match conference, Steve Borthwick, England's coach, he mentioned that we didn't see our driving maul for a long time. So it came quite nicely. But my question is, why didn't Italy try to contest in those lineouts?
You're asking the wrong man here. I know nothing about forward play, but I think England's strength is their forward pack. It is their lineout. It is their set piece, and I think that was clear in the game. Italy, they don't have the same amount of power at the moment in their forward pack, so it's probably hard to contest and hard to get a level footing in a game like that. But what they are strong at is that that expansive play, that playing from anywhere, spreading the ball wide. We've always mentioned a couple of their backs, and that will set them in good stead going for the rest of the tournament because they are dangerous and they can play from everywhere.
And England are probably going to be up there in terms of having the strongest pack.
Yeah.
So that is always going to be a tough one for them. But as we saw in that second half, they really made the most of the space they created, and they got some really exciting backs.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, Matt, so obviously we've got a week off of rugby, and after all the recovery, Italy is to host the world's #1 Ireland in Rome. Do you think this could cause a bit of an upset?
I think that they have no pressure on them. Obviously, the pressure's on the Irish, so nobody will be expecting them to get a win. But I think that could play into their favour and into their hands. And at the moment, Italian rugby is changed completely, dramatically, in the sense that they're willing to throw the ball around and take some risks. So you never know with a game plan like that.
Wonderful to have you, Matt. Thanks for that. What do you think of Italy hosting the world #1?
I think Matt's Italian side's wishful thinking there. I think I think Ireland are playing some of the best rugby I've ever seen them play. They're number one in the world. The way they dispatched France, which I thought was going to be a real challenging game for them, but I think they were on top pretty much 90% of the way, the game. And I think it's going to be a very, very tough challenge for Italy. But I can't see them beating it. I'm not beating Ireland.
No, I'm with you there, Tom. I hope Italy give them a really good game, but I can't see them cracking Ireland at this time.
Thanks, Matt, for joining us, and we will speak to you soon after. Now, Ollie Lawrence and Jack Wills made a stunning performance as well as James Ludlam and Chesham, having a fair share of making an impact, but they missed 40 tackles by England, and Italy won the second half. What are your guys' thoughts on their performances?
I mean, the two you just mentioned there, I mean, Jack and Ollie Lawrence, both of them fantastic. And the difference that Ollie Lawrence made, that centre partnership, was it was incredible.
Yeah.
It was completely different performance from the week before. And then with Jack, his turnover, his work rate around the park was fantastic. I mean, there was a point in the game where he was making a tackle, and then the very next phase, he was there over the ball, jackling away, scoring a try. And it's great because obviously a couple of years ago he had the horrendous knee injury. He was out for, I think, almost 11 months. Yep. But to come back to international rugby to play like that, it was just incredible.
Because we talked last week, didn't we, about the 10-12 axis between Smith and Farrell. And we said having a straight running 12 would potentially make a difference. We thought with Smith, but it was actually with Farrell. But having that made a massive difference. So Lawrence had a man of the match game, but in fairness to Jack Wills, he was everywhere, and great to see him coming back after, as you say, that horrendous injury. It's always good to see players return, and especially at that level. But he looked like he'd never been away. He was superb.
And just on Ollie Lawrence, I mean, everyone talked about Manu Tuilagi, and obviously we know how great Manu is, but the power that Ollie brings to that centre partnership. I mean, the line breaks he was making, the tackling, his defensive alignment, all the defensive problems from the week before were gone, because he just adds that different dimension that Smith or the Farrell partnership just doesn't do.
And then there's space outside, for the likes of Slade then, and obviously Malins is playing really well on the wing as well. So it just makes sense.
Do you think that Marcus Smith should have come a bit early than the last 7 minutes?
I mean, it's a tough one. I mean, England were winning, and Farrell didn't have a bad game.
No,
and he's their leader. So to be fair, I think Steve Borthwick got it right this time. I think he got it right this week. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next game. But look, we mentioned before, it was about getting the win, and the way Italy were playing, and they were coming back into the game. They probably just need to steady the ship and making changes. Just bringing Smith on, who's a more attacking player, is probably wasn't the best. It wouldn't have been the right decision at that point.
And I think, Tony, you're exactly right. I think with the situation with Italy coming back into the game, you needed your leader on the pitch to steady the ship, make sure that the win was had, and that's why Farrell stayed on for so long. So I think both have got that right.